Midnight again. There was something wrong with the key. I noticed it the second I picked it up from under the clock. The same clock where I always grabbed the night register keys before heading to aisle 13. But this time, the key felt colder than usual. Heavy, like it hadn't been touched in years, which didn't make sense. I'd used it the night before. My name is Craig. I've been working the overnight shift as a stock associate at a Walmart in Jackson, Mississippi for the past 11 months. Before that, I worked night security at a county morgue just off Route 49. I don't talk about it much, but something from that place, something I still don't understand, didn't stay behind when I left. This store isn't much different from others. Long aisles, buzzing lights, a freezer section that hums louder than it should. On my shift, it's mostly silence, interrupted by the occasional clatter of carts or the low hiss of intercom static. There's a rhythm to the quiet that I've learned to live with. You hear the same sounds enough nights in a row, and they start to feel like home. That night, though, something was different. It started with the key. I walked past the electronics section, trailing my cart stacked with sealed boxes. TVs glowed in standby mode, looping the same demo footage on mute. Security mirrors above the corners showed my reflection, but something about it felt delayed, offbeat, like it wasn't syncing with my steps. I pushed the cart into the dairy aisle. Cold air brushed my arms. That's when I noticed it. The door to the walk-in cooler was cracked open. Now that cooler is kept locked after 11 p.m. We've had people sneak in before, kids playing hide and seek, sometimes worse, but the lock wasn't broken. The latch was just hanging, like someone had used the key, the one I picked up. I stepped closer. Fog crawled along the floor, mixing with the buzz of the overhead lights. I reached out, and the metal felt just as cold as the key had. I looked inside. Nothing, or at least no one, but the boxes were rearranged. Slightly. One of the milk crates had been moved. Not by much, but enough that I noticed. And right there behind the shelf, wedged between the back wall and the cooling fan, was something that didn't belong in any grocery store. A black tag, rectangular, smooth, like the kind we used on cadavers. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it, breathing slowly. It couldn't be real. I hadn't seen one of those in almost a year. But there it was, tucked in like a memory refusing to stay buried. I backed out slowly, closed the door, and turned the latch. Everything was in place, which made what happened next even harder to explain. I can still remember the first time I walked into the morgue. The floor had a kind of chill that crawled through your shoes. Not cold like a freezer, colder, like something was breathing underneath the tiles, something old and still waiting. It was never supposed to be permanent. I took the job after a string of layoffs and a failed attempt at nursing school. Night security at a county morgue wasn't exactly where I saw myself ending up, but it paid better than Walmart, and most nights were dead quiet. No pun intended. My post was simple: monitor the doors, keep the logs updated, make rounds every hour on the hour, and never, under any circumstances, open the drawers unless instructed by Dr. Patel, the lead pathologist. She didn't say it in a joking way. There was something in her eyes when she said it, like she meant every word. The halls were narrow, lit by buzzing fluorescents that sometimes flickered even when the bulbs were new. There was a vending machine near the front entrance that rattled when the air conditioning kicked in. Every time I passed it, I'd catch my own reflection in the glass, slightly warped, slightly off. I stopped looking after the third week. My office was a small glass cubicle with a panel of monitors showing every hallway. Drawer room, lobby, autopsy chamber, loading dock. Most of the time, the screens just showed still images, no movement, but one screen never stayed still. Camera 7, the drawer room. It had a soft flicker, like something kept triggering the motion sensor. I asked maintenance once. They said it was just faulty wiring. But when I offered to swap the camera myself, they told me not to bother. I learned to ignore it, or tried to. Until one night, the motion alert went off at 2:13 a.m. I remember the exact time because I had just logged the last round in the book. I was sitting in my chair, sipping on a vending machine coffee, when the buzzer chirped. Camera 7, same flicker. But this time, it stayed on. For over 4 minutes, the monitor showed the drawer room with the light clearly on, and something, barely visible, moved behind the metal racks. I leaned closer. It wasn't a person. It didn't move like one. It crouched, low, then straightened slowly. But when I zoomed in, the frame went black, completely. When it came back on, everything was back to normal. Light off, room still, the drawers untouched. I grabbed my flashlight and keyring, walked down the hall, checking every door twice. Everything was locked. Drawer room sealed, lights out, no one inside, except drawer 7. It was slightly open, not enough to trigger a full alert, just enough to show the edges of the rubber seal. I didn't touch it. I didn't even step inside. I just stood there, watching the drawer from the hallway, waiting to hear something, anything. But there was only silence, the kind of silence that presses on your chest. I went back to my post and wrote it off as paranoia. But from that night on, drawer 7 was never fully closed again. He came in on a Thursday. I remember because the delivery truck was late that night, and the autopsy wing smelled like formalin and burned rubber. The body arrived without tags, no wallet, no ID, just a black plastic bag zipped tight, handed off by 2 EMTs who avoided eye contact the entire time. I signed the intake form and followed protocol. Logged the time, noted the transfer, wrote unidentified male, mid-40s on the clipboard. But what I didn't write down, what I couldn't put into words, was the smell. It wasn't decomposition. I'd grown used to that. This was different, metallic, almost electrical, like a power tool had been left running in a damp room. It lingered in the hallway long after the stretcher was wheeled into the drawer room. Dr. Patel didn't show up that night. Said she was delayed, something about a late forensic review, so the man went into drawer 7, alone. No postmortem, no inspection, just a cold shelf in the far corner, the same one that never quite closed. I remember the technician, Ron, grumbling about it. "Drawer 7 sticks," he said. "We've been meaning to replace the track. Gets jammed on the way in. Just leave it be." So I did. That night, I sat in the office watching the monitors. Camera 7 flickered again, and for the first time, I didn't ignore it. The drawer was closed, fully shut, lights off. Everything looked normal, until the timestamp froze. I blinked, tapped the screen. Nothing moved. All the other feeds continued, lobby, autopsy, doc, but camera 7 was frozen at 2:18 a.m. Then the feed jumped, just for a second. The drawer was open again, just like before, and something dark was leaning out of it. Not climbing, not falling, just leaning, like it was listening. I stood up too fast and knocked over my coffee. The mug shattered, spilling across the desk and shorting one of the lower monitors. I didn't care. I just stared at that screen, waiting for the next frame. But the feed went black. I ran the hall in under 30 seconds, badge ready, flashlight on. The drawer room was locked. I keyed in. The air inside was colder than usual. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed faintly. Every drawer was closed, including number 7. But the floor was wet. A small trail, like condensation, from drawer 7 all the way to the door. Then it just stopped. No footprints, no smudge, no source. The next morning I mentioned it to Dr. Patel. She looked at me for a long time, then asked, "Did you go inside the drawer?" I said no, which was true. She nodded, turned away and said, "Good. Never open 7 again. It's not a drawer anymore." That was the last thing she ever said to me about it. But I wasn't done with it, and neither was it with me. It was a Tuesday, one of those nights where nothing feels real, too quiet, too still. I had just finished stocking the last of the cereal pallets near aisle 9. My cart was empty. My hands were cold. I remember checking my watch. 1:12 a.m. Then the lights went out. Not flickered, not dimmed, out. The entire store was swallowed in instant black. A silence followed that didn't belong to a store full of machines and refrigeration units. It was the kind of silence I'd only heard once before, the night drawer 7 first opened. I stood completely still, one hand on the edge of a shelf, my eyes straining in the dark. The backup generator should have kicked in within 5 seconds. It didn't. Instead, I heard something move. Not far, a single shift in the air, like someone stepping lightly on tile, somewhere to my right. I turned, but there was no light to orient myself. I couldn't even see the edge of the aisle. Then the intercom clicked on. It hissed. Just white noise at first. Then, faint breathing. Someone was holding the button. I stared up toward the ceiling like I could see the speakers. I don't know why. There was no voice. Just the low, rhythmic inhale-exhale of someone, or something, not trying to speak, just trying to be heard. And then, at 2:13 a.m., the lights blinked back on. Not all at once, section by section. Starting with the pharmacy, moving across the store like a slow wave of artificial daylight. I stood there, heart thumping, as the fluorescent bars above me flickered back to life. Everything was where it had been, except my cart, the one I'd left behind just a minute ago. It was gone. I walked down the aisle slowly. My footsteps echoed louder than usual. Then I saw it. The cart had been moved to the edge of the dairy section, just past the coolers. It was tipped slightly to one side. Inside the metal basket was a single object, a name tag. Not mine, not from Walmart. It was faded, cracked, black plastic, no logo, just white etched letters that had almost been rubbed away, but I could still make them out. Patel M. My mouth went dry. I hadn't seen that name since the day I left the morgue. I reached for it, but stopped. The moment I stepped closer, the freezer behind the milk shelf made a sound. A soft knock. Not mechanical, not normal. Like a knuckle tapping lightly from inside. Once, then twice, then silence. I didn't touch the name tag. I backed away, turned the corner, and walked toward the back room without saying a word. Later, when I returned, the cart was back in its original spot, empty. The tag was gone, but the clock above the stockroom door read 2:13 a.m., even though it was almost 3, and the lights were dimming again. You start to catalog sounds when you work the night shift. Your brain does it without asking. The rhythm of the bottle coolers, the hum of overhead lighting, the beep from a scanner, even when no one's around. It's how you learn to filter what's normal from what isn't. That night, I heard something new. It wasn't loud, just wrong. A soft, continuous click, like a fingernail tapping gently on glass. Not frantic, not random. It had a pattern, a slow, deliberate rhythm. Tap, pause, tap, tap, long pause, tap. It came from the back of the store. Somewhere past the loading dock hallway, near the walk-in cooler where we'd found the black cadaver tag. I froze the moment I heard it. I'd been restocking produce. Tomatoes, bagged lettuce, cold fruit trays. Nothing unusual. But then the click started, and every hair on my arm lifted. I knew the sound wasn't part of the store. I knew it the way you know when someone's watching you, even if you haven't seen them. It wasn't a fan. It wasn't the ice machine. It wasn't the freezer. I followed it slowly, stepping through the deli section. The sound got louder as I approached the sealed metal door that leads into the cold storage corridor. That area is supposed to stay locked after midnight. Only managers have the code, but the keypad was blinking red, which meant someone had opened it recently. I hesitated. The clicking continued, now sharper, faster. It sounded closer. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air dropped at least 10 degrees. A wave of frozen mist brushed past me. The hallway was lit by a single blue safety bulb, casting long shadows on the metal walls. I walked toward the cooler door and stopped. Something was standing inside the freezer, not moving, just there. Behind the fogged glass window, I saw a figure, tall, rigid, head tilted slightly toward the side like it was listening. I blinked, rubbed the condensation from the outside of the window. But when I looked again, it was gone. The door hadn't opened. There was no sound of movement, just the low mechanical hum, and the clicking was still there, except now it was behind me. I spun around. Nothing. The hallway was empty, but the air felt charged, like static before a storm. My flashlight flickered for the briefest moment, and in that flicker I swear I saw someone crouched by the floor, just at the edge of the hallway. Pale skin, no eyes, arms too long for the body. Then the light steadied, and it was gone. I backed out without turning my back to the dark, closed the door, locked it twice. Later that night, while restocking the beverage aisle, I found a small puddle near the Gatorade shelf. No spill nearby, no broken bottle, Just a slow trail of condensation, leading to the end of the aisle, right up to the glass doors of the freezer section, where I heard the tap again, but this time it came from the inside, and it was spelling something. The next night I came in an hour early. I didn't tell anyone why. I just clocked in, grabbed the handheld scanner, and went straight to the back. I needed to know if the freezer hallway was locked, if the puddle was still there, if anything had changed. It hadn't, but something else was waiting for me. As I stepped past the break room, I saw Dave, one of the overnight managers, standing alone, staring at the wall near the time clocks. He wasn't moving, just standing there, stiff like he was trying to read something that wasn't written. I greeted him. No answer. Then he said it, quietly, barely above a whisper. "Don't acknowledge it." I asked what he meant. He turned to me slowly, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. "If you see it," he said, "don't react. Don't speak. Don't let it know you know." I stood there, unsure whether to laugh or leave. Then he reached into his pocket and handed me a small folded note. Yellowed paper, frayed at the edges. Written in shaky handwriting were 5 lines. "Don't look at camera, 7 after 2 a.m. Don't follow the knocking, don't answer your name on the intercom. Don't touch drawer. 7, don't acknowledge it." I asked where he got it. He said it had been passed down, from one night shift worker to another, years ago, from a guy named Lawrence, who used to work security, before he disappeared. I froze. Lawrence was the man I replaced at the morgue. I never met him, but I remember the HR file. Position vacated without formal resignation. Badge never returned. I wanted to ask Dave more, but he walked off before I could. Just turned and left like he hadn't said anything. That night I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if he was right? What if this thing, whatever it was, only got stronger when you gave it attention? I kept my head down, did my rounds, stalked quietly. Ignored the buzz of the intercom when it crackled around 2:15. Ignored the brief flicker in the lights above aisle 13. Ignored the clicking that started again, now slower, more deliberate. But when I passed the dairy aisle, the milk shelf had a single handprint on the inside of the glass. 5 long fingers, thin, smudged like condensation on the inside of a car window. I didn't stop. I didn't look. I just kept walking, kept moving. Later, in the break room, I pulled the note out again, read each line, one by one. When I got to the last line, "Don't acknowledge it," the intercom hissed again, and this time it whispered my name, but not like a machine. It sounded like Dr. Patel. There's a specific tone the intercom makes when someone presses the talk button. A sharp click, followed by a soft hum, just before the speaker activates. I've heard it hundreds of times, usually harmless. Calls for cleanups, requests for price checks, morning announcements echoing through empty aisles. But that night, it came on at 2:19 a.m. and it said my name. Not in the flat, static voice of a coworker, not even in a human cadence. It was slower, breathier, as if someone was holding the speaker too close to their mouth, letting the air hit the mic in waves. "Craig," just once. Then silence. I stood frozen in the middle of aisle 5 holding a box of plastic cutlery. My grip tightened. I glanced around the aisle. No other carts, no movement. The buzz of the lights overhead was too steady, too perfect, like a soundscape designed to mask something else. I looked toward the ceiling speaker. Nothing moved. I waited. Then the intercom crackled again. A short burst, like static pushed through a clenched jaw. "Craig, drawer 7. I dropped the box. My pulse hammered in my ears. The fluorescent lights above me flickered once, then steadied. The silence in the aisle felt heavier than air, like the shelves themselves were leaning in to hear what I'd do. I walked slowly toward the front, eyes on the floor. My shoes squeaked with each step. I reached the service desk, where the intercom controls were located, and saw the button panel, untouched. No one was there. The log sheet showed no announcements had been made since midnight. I checked the security monitor mounted on the wall. I flipped to camera 7. For the first time since I left the morgue, I saw it again. Drawer 7, slightly open. But now something was standing beside it. A figure, motionless, just tall enough to reach the drawer handle. head bowed forward, arms hanging stiff and too low. The shape was gray against the blue lighting, grainy, like a recording from a broken tape. Then it turned. The figure on the monitor turned its head, slowly, mechanically, toward the camera, and smiled. Or maybe it didn't. The image was too pixelated, but I felt it smile. Somewhere in my chest, in that place, fear lives long before logic arrives. I shut the monitor off. I turned away, hands shaking, and walked to the break room. I sat in the corner seat, furthest from the door. That's when I noticed something scratched into the table. I hadn't seen it before. Etched into the plastic surface, deep enough to catch with a fingernail, were the same 5 words from the note. Don't acknowledge it. Don't speak. I traced the letters with my thumb. Then the break room door opened on its own. No wind, no footstep, just the soft creak of hinges. And the lights above flickered. You try to forget certain nights. You convince yourself it was stress, lack of sleep, a trick of the light. But when the same thing follows you across state lines, when it leaves a freezer drawer and steps into a Walmart dairy aisle, forgetting stops being an option. It becomes denial. Back when I was still at the morgue, there was one night I never logged. I never told anyone, not even Dr. Patel, not even myself, not really. I buried it the way we were trained to handle the unclaimed dead, quietly and without ceremony. But it came back. It was a stormy Friday, late September. I remember because the power kept flickering across the hospital campus. Lightning painted the corridor walls with skeletal outlines of the autopsy room furniture. I was on my 3rd round of the night. Everything seemed normal, until I noticed drawer 7 was open. Fully this time, pulled all the way out, empty. I stopped cold. There was no request for an autopsy, no retrieval log, no tag pulled. And yet the drawer, the one that had refused to fully shut for weeks, was now wide open, clean, bare, gleaming steel reflecting the overhead light in a way I hadn't seen since it was first installed. I checked the surrounding drawers, all accounted for, no mix-ups. I even checked the night intake logs. Nothing new had been added or moved, but I could feel it. That drawer had been occupied hours ago, and now it was not. I closed it carefully. It slid in with a smoothness that felt unnatural. Later that night, camera 7 went dark for 27 minutes. When it came back on, there was a chair in the middle of the drawer room, one of the break room folding chairs, just sitting there, facing drawer 7. No one had logged a break. No one admitted to moving the chair. When I asked Ron about it, he just said, I wouldn't sit there. He didn't laugh. He didn't blink. That was the same night someone scrawled the word below on the inside of my locker, written with what looked like fingernail scratches, right beneath my badge number. I didn't sleep after that. I stayed up, rewatching old surveillance footage, trying to find the moment the chair appeared. It was never there. Then it was. Just like the figure in the Walmart coolers. Just like the voice in the intercom. Just like the name tag that vanished the moment I looked away. Whatever was in that drawer, it had never really stayed there. It just needed me to leave. And now it had followed me. Back at Walmart 2 nights ago, I went into the employee locker room before break. Someone had opened my locker again. But this time it wasn't empty. Sitting on the top shelf was an evidence bag, the kind we used at the morgue. Inside it was the same black tag I'd seen near the milk shelf, except this time it had a date written on it in smudged ink. 9/27, the day drawer 7 was found empty. And underneath the tag, folded carefully, was my old morgue badge. But the photo wasn't mine. I told myself not to look. I told myself it was just another hallucination, sleep deprivation stacked on top of a decaying memory. But denial only works when the world plays along. And Walmart didn't. The walk-in cooler was open again. 3rd time that week. It was just past 3 a.m., the time when the store settles into a kind of mechanical coma. The registers stop blinking. The overhead music cuts to silence. Even the cameras seem to slow their frame rate, like the system is too tired to keep watching. I was in the back corridor, checking the late pallet logs, when I felt it. The temperature drop. Subtle at first, then unmistakable. A draft slithered past my ankle and I turned, slowly, toward the cooler door. It was wide open, not just unlatched, not cracked, wide. The fog spilling out was dense enough to roll across the tile like smoke. My flashlight caught nothing but swirling condensation. I didn't move, just listened. The air was breathing again. That soft, wet rhythm that doesn't belong to machines. It came in pulses, inhales, exhales, from somewhere deep inside. I called out stupidly, "Hello?" No answer, but something moved. Not footsteps, just a shift, like weight being redistributed on metal shelving. Slow, intentional, measured. I should have left. I should have walked away. Instead, I stepped inside. The fog wrapped around me instantly. Visibility dropped to nothing. I could barely see my own hand. The shelving on either side groaned under the cold. Boxes of meat, stacked crates, plastic-wrapped pallets, and then a figure at the end of the aisle. It wasn't facing me, just standing there, motionless, its shape barely distinguishable from the haze. Tall, lean, arms at its side, no breath, no sound. I didn't blink. It turned its head, not fast, not slow, just enough to reveal one thing. It wasn't standing on the ground. Its feet were floating 3 inches above the floor. Then the light above me blew out. The aisle plunged into deeper shadow, and when the emergency bulbs kicked in, the figure was gone. I turned, heart racing, trying to find the exit. But the shelves had shifted. They weren't where they'd been. The path was wrong. I moved forward anyway, counting steps, feeling my way along the slick metal edges. I passed a row of hanging pork cuts, then a stack of cleaning solution. And then, my hand touched something warm. In a walk-in cooler that had to be 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Something warm, soft, damp, like skin. I pulled back instinctively, but there was nothing there. No shelf, no box, just empty air. Then, whispering, right in my ear. Not words, not exactly, but syllables that scraped the inside of my skull, like breath against bone. I stumbled backward, slammed into a crate, and finally saw the exit light blinking red through the mist. I ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop until I was out. The door slammed shut behind me. I stood there in the hallway, panting, frozen, and noticed something under my boot. A shoe print, barefoot, narrow, child-sized, leading into the cooler, but not out. I asked to see the footage the next day. Officially, I didn't have clearance. But after 11 months on night shift, you learn which supervisors look the other way. I caught Michelle just as she was leaving the front office. Told her I heard something strange in the back corridor around 3 a.m. She shrugged, typed in her credentials, and left me alone in the security booth. "Don't be long," she said. "System auto wipes every 5 days." I scanned back to Tuesday, 2:58 a.m. The hallway camera showed what I expected, fog bleeding from the walk-in cooler. The mist curled along the floor like it was being exhaled from something deep underground. Then, at 3:01, I saw myself. Walking in, flashlight pointed forward, slow steps, alone. I watched the screen, waited for movement, waited for it. But what showed up next wasn't what I expected. At 3:03, the camera glitched, a single frame stuttered, and in that frozen second, something was visible just behind me, a pale shape, bare shoulders, a blurred face hanging just over my left shoulder. Then, nothing. The image snapped back to normal. I was still there, still alone. The fog thinner now. At 3:04, I came running out, slammed the door, looked around, exactly as I remembered. But when I paused the frame to study the hallway, I noticed something else. The red exit light was off, except I remembered it blinking. I rewound, watched again, same path, same fog, same sprint out. But in the footage, no blinking light, just darkness. I scanned back further, jumping hour by hour through the night, hoping for a clue. At 12:41 a.m., something caught my eye. A figure standing at the end of aisle 13. No cart, no vest, just stillness. I zoomed in, as far as the grainy feet allowed. It had no face, no mouth, no eyes, just a smooth, featureless mask of skin where a head should have been. It stood completely still for 6 minutes. Then it turned and walked backward into the darkness, not away, not vanishing, just unwalking. frame by frame. Michelle returned right as I was pulling the USB backup drive from the terminal. She asked if I saw anything. I lied, said it was probably just a sensor error. Maybe fog from the cooler tripped the camera. She nodded slowly, then said something I didn't expect. That hallway's always been strange. Back in 2014, a cart boy went missing back there. Left his vest on the floor, shoes too. Cops never found him. She didn't wait for a response. Just walked off like she hadn't said anything odd. I returned the drive to my locker and went back to work. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't been alone in that cooler. And whatever had followed me out, it still didn't want to be seen. Not by the camera, not by the light, not by anyone who might try to understand it. Only by me. I heard the whistling for the first time on a Thursday. Breaks during night shift are quiet by design. No TVs, no chatter. Just the buzz of vending machines and the occasional fizz of a microwave. People come in, eat in silence, stare at their phones, then leave. But at 2:47 a.m., the room was empty. I know that because I was sitting there alone. The whistling started behind me. Soft, tuneless. Just 3 notes, rising, falling, repeating. Like someone was trying to remember a song they didn't quite know. I froze mid-bite. The sound didn't come from the hallway. It didn't echo from the ceiling vents. It came from inside the room. From the far corner, near the emergency exit no one uses. I turned slowly, trying to keep my breath even. No one was there, but the chair closest to the exit was pulled back, slightly turned, like someone had just stood up. I stood, backed away from the table. The whistling stopped. I waited. Then the vending machine lit up on its own. I watched as the keypad blinked. 1, 2, 4. The same sequence someone would use for the cinnamon trail mix. The bag dropped. No money, no touch. I walked over slowly, staring at the machine. The glass reflected my face, pale, strained. But behind my shoulder, in the reflection, was a second figure. Too close, too tall. I turned. Nothing. But the bag in the tray wasn't trail mix. It was a Morgue label, sealed in a Ziploc, folded into thirds. My name was written on it. Craig, intake, 27, Sept 28. The date was 1 day after the drawer was found empty. I didn't take it. I left it there, backed out of the room, and went straight to the loading dock. I needed space, air. But when I pushed open the dock door, it didn't lead outside. It led to a hallway I hadn't seen before. Narrow, green walls, flickering ceiling bulbs, an old analog clock ticking too fast. I stepped back instinctively, slammed the door shut, opened it again. Back to normal. Parking lot. Night air. I stayed outside for the rest of the break, not saying a word. When I returned later to grab my bag, the label was gone. The chair was pushed in. The vending machine was dark, but someone had left a note on the table. 3 words, etched with a knife. He knows now. I stopped wearing my old work badge after I left the morgue, tossed it into a drawer, forgot about it, tried to let the job disappear behind me like a bad dream. But nightmares have a way of showing up in the places you feel most awake. That night I found it on the floor of the frozen foods aisle. It was just lying there, face up. The clip still bent, the photo slightly warped from moisture damage. Except it wasn't my photo anymore. The name was mine, Craig H. Dunley, same title, night security. But the face looking back was not me. It was stretched, gray, the eyes too close together, the skin too smooth, no pores, like someone had tried to sculpt me from memory using soft clay. The more I looked at it, the more wrong it felt. I knelt down, reached to pick it up, and the badge slid an inch away from my hand, like it had moved, on its own. I backed off, left it there. Instead of stalking the aisle, I walked straight to the manager's office. Michelle wasn't in. Neither was anyone else. I sat at the desk and flipped through the incident logbook. Just something to distract myself. But on the 3rd page, wedged between 2 reports about spilled bleach and a missing box cutter, I saw a handwritten entry in red ink. If he sees it, it won't leave. No initials, no date, just that. I returned to the floor an hour later. The badge was gone. That same night, while mopping near the front entrance, I noticed the automatic doors triggered on their own. No one there, no cart, no wind, just open, then close. Twice. And then, under the nearest register belt, a folded white cloth. I reached down, picked it up carefully. It was a body tag shroud, identical to the ones we used to wrap personal items at the morgue. Thin cotton, smelled faintly of antiseptic and something older, earthy, like dry skin. Tucked inside was a photo, not of me, of the cooler hallway, empty, blurry, grainy like a photo taken from old CCTV, except the timestamp read 03:17 a.m. Tomorrow. I turned it over. One word was written in thick black marker: stand. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew it had started to remember me, in detail. Where I went, what I wore, how I looked when I didn't know it was watching. And it wanted me to look back. I wasn't supposed to be in the dairy aisle that night. My rotation had been changed, temporarily they said, to seasonal items. But something drew me back, a tension in the air, a coldness in the vents, like the store itself was nudging me toward it. So I went. No cart, no scanner, just me and the shelves. It was after 3 a.m. The lights above the milk section were dimmer than usual, humming in an uneven rhythm, like one of them was struggling to stay alive. The glass doors were fogged from the inside. Condensation crawled in slow arcs, streaking the view, but I saw him anyway. He was crouched, just behind the shelves, on the other side of the milk crates. I could barely make out the shape. A head tilted slightly, knees tucked close, one arm draped loosely over the shelf bar. His body was completely still, but the fog on the glass shifted with his breath. Long, shallow, controlled. Not a customer, not staff. No one should have fit back there. I stepped forward, slowly, and the lights above me went out. Only the cooler lights stayed on, illuminating the inside of the shelves. And now his face was visible, pressed close to the glass. Mouth slightly open, lips too pale, eyes not blinking. He looked hungry, not in a physical way, not for food. Hungry for being seen, for being noticed, for being real again. I took a step back. He didn't move. Then the intercom clicked on again, not across the store, but right above the dairy aisle. The speaker crackled once, and he spoke, not through the glass, through the intercom. Cold keeps him still. My chest tightened. The breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move. The milk crate nearest me began to vibrate, slightly, like something underneath it was shifting. I looked down and saw water pooling near the base of the fridge, but it wasn't leaking. It was rising, and there, floating in it, was a morgue toe tag. My name. Again. Intake return. Dunley. C. I turned, ran. Didn't look back, but as I passed the bread aisle, I saw something that made me stop. All the loaves, every single one, had been rotated backward. Labels turned to the back, like someone didn't want to be seen, or didn't want me reading anything else but what was coming. I walked back to the break room, locked the door, and sat in the corner again. And on the table, just like before, was a note. This time, it was shorter, scratched with something jagged into the plastic. Too late to not see. I was doing inventory near the pharmacy section when I saw her. She couldn't have been older than 8. Thin arms, hospital gown, hair matted like it hadn't dried in days. She was standing barefoot by the blood pressure machine, staring at the cuff like it was some kind of relic. I froze. There were no children scheduled for overnights. No parents. No one had entered the store in over an hour. The cameras would have caught it. But there she was, alone, pale, unmoving. She turned toward me. Her eyes were too wide, too still. Like the motion that should have reached her face had been delayed somehow. Then she spoke. Not loudly, not softly, just directly. "Did you do it?" I didn't answer. She stepped forward, dragging the hem of the gown. Each step left a faint, wet footprint on the tile. "They said you signed for it. They said you wrote the number." I couldn't breathe. My mind went straight back to the morgue, to the intake forms, to drawer 7. Intake. 927. Female. Unidentified. Juvenile. But we never had a juvenile body. Not while I was there. Or so I thought. She reached into her gown and pulled out a folder, the kind we used for internal case reports. Water damaged, partially torn. She let it fall to the ground between us. I didn't want to look. I did anyway. Inside was a single autopsy photo. Her chest cavity opened, eyes still wide, no tag, no incision marks, just a hollowed outline, like something had been removed before the procedure. Written across the image in thick red marker were 4 words: "You already saw me." I looked up, and she was gone. No sound, no running, no breath, just a faint trail of footprints evaporating into the polished floor. I picked up the folder and opened the second page. There was a signature, mine, but the date beside it read 2 years before I even applied at the morgue. Later that night, when I returned to my locker, the photo was inside, folded and dry. My name circled in black ink, and something else, written below. "Do it right this time." It wasn't a warning. It was a request, a reminder, or maybe a demand from something that had never left drawer 7. There's a truth I haven't said out loud, not to the staff at Walmart, not to anyone, but it's time. I did open it. Once. Drawer 7. It was 6 weeks before I quit the morgue. The night had been quiet, uneventful. The intake sheet had only one new arrival. A middle-aged man pulled from the river, no ID, no known next of kin. He was assigned to drawer 5. I remember that clearly. I watched the tech slide him in, close it, lock it. I even double-checked the tag. But at 3:04 a.m., the alarm on camera 7 went off. Movement detected in the drawer room. I looked up from the desk and saw the light flickering. Only that drawer, number 7, was open. Not just cracked, pulled halfway out. I walked to the room, keyring shaking in my hand. When I opened the door, the cold air hit harder than usual, but there was no hum, no buzz from the fluorescents, just that open drawer, waiting. I told myself I was just checking it, just closing it, but I stepped closer, looked in, and what I saw wasn't empty. The drawer was occupied by a child, eyes open, face dry, not decomposed, and she was breathing, barely, shallow and slow, no movement beyond the rise and fall of her chest. Her eyes locked on mine, unblinking. I froze. Time folded in on itself. Then, she whispered, "Close it, and don't forget." I slammed the drawer, harder than I should have, locked it, staggered backward. But when I looked up, the drawer number had changed. It now read 5. I checked the other drawers, counted backward, double-checked the intake logs. No drawer 7. I went to the monitors. The feed showed nothing. Camera 7 was dark for over 9 minutes. Static, no record. The next morning, Ron came in early. I told him what happened. He didn't ask for proof, didn't laugh. He just said, "Don't touch 7 again. If it asks, pretend it never happened." So I did. I buried the memory. Let it rot. Told myself it was a breakdown, a mix-up, a dream caught between overnights. But now, after everything, the voices, the name tag, the girl, the whispering inside the coolers, I know better. That drawer didn't just hold bodies. It held something else, a pattern, a request, a habit wearing the skin of the dead. And it had waited for me to forget, so it could come back. At Walmart, where the doors don't lock the same way, where drawers are replaced with freezers and the tags keep finding their way to the wrong names. Names like mine. It always starts with that buzz, a low hum like a filament straining under too much current. You don't hear it with your ears first. You feel it in your teeth, in your bones. That night, it came from aisle 13. Again, I'd avoided that section for weeks. Claimed I had allergy triggers near the detergent pallets. Said I was on rotation, but the system knew better. The lights above it had begun to flicker every night at 3:17 a.m. No other aisle, no other time, and always, just as I passed the frozen section. That night, I didn't pass it. I stood at the end of the aisle, hands in my vest pockets, watching the light above the third shelf buzz and dim, buzz and dim. Then it strobed once, fast, and the shadow appeared, halfway down the aisle, behind the stack of bleach bottles, barely visible, crouched low, not hiding, just waiting. It wasn't the girl. It wasn't the figure from the milk shelf. It was taller, leaner, shoulders too high, arms draped forward like they had no bones in them. It moved once, a shiver, like static pulled through flesh. I should have run, but I didn't. I stepped into the aisle. Each footstep made the lights react. One blinked, one flickered, one stayed off completely. And behind me, the sound of another step. Not mine. I turned. No one. But the bleach bottle nearest my foot tipped slightly as if nudged. And that's when I noticed the smell. Formalin. Old. Acrid. The exact scent of the prep room at the morgue, mixed with steel, cold fluid and time. I stepped forward again. The shadow moved. It didn't walk. It folded, from one crouch to another, like gravity didn't work the same for it, like its joints had been reprogrammed. When I reached the spot where it had been, it was gone. But the shelf in front of me had a handprint, inside the packaging. One of the bleach boxes was partially translucent. Through the thin plastic, I could see 5 fingers pressed outward, from inside the wrapping. And beneath that, etched lightly into the cardboard with something sharp, "Don't follow the light." I looked up, just as the fixture above me shattered. Glass hit my shoulder. The bulb sparked once, then silence. In the brief darkness, I saw it again, at the far end of the aisle, standing fully upright this time, watching, as if every flicker was a message, not to run, but to remember and keep remembering, because forgetting had never been an option, not since drawer 7. I stopped trusting reflections, mirrors, glass, the convex security domes above the aisles. They all became unreliable. I'd catch movements that didn't match mine, see shifts in posture I hadn't made. Once in the electronics section, I passed a dark TV screen and saw my reflection look away before I did. But that night, it escalated. I was restocking end cap displays near the toy aisle. The camera above was fixed in place, a wide-angle feed on monitor 3. I'd passed it dozens of times, but when I glanced at it then, I froze. There were 2 of me, not side by side, not staggered, overlaid, like one body was superimposed over another, both standing in the same spot, but slightly out of sync. My head was tilted right. The shadows was left. My arms were still. The shadows twitched, just slightly, like it was correcting posture, like it didn't quite know how to stand in me. I waved my hand. Only one reflection moved. I stared at the monitor, my breath caught in my throat. And then the delay began. A split-second lag between my motion and the image. Just enough to register. Just enough to prove it wasn't real. Then the second figure stepped out of me. On screen only. 2 shadows. 1 body. The second one lingered behind, standing a few feet back, facing the same direction, not moving, not blinking, not reacting. And then the feed cut to black. I backed away from the monitor, heart hammering, and bumped into a shelf. A boxed doll tumbled off, hit the floor. And when I bent down to pick it up, I saw it. Written across the doll's packaging, inside the plastic, like it had been printed beneath the barcode. "You won't wake up." I dropped it, ran straight to the break room, locked the door. The vending machine was already lit. The keypad read 277, a drawer number. I didn't move, just stared at the machine until the screen went dark again. I looked into the reflective microwave door. My face stared back, but the eyes were wrong, too far apart, too still. And then, behind me, another set of eyes opened. No blink, no iris, just the shape. I spun around. Empty room. But the reflection remained for 1 second longer before fading. Like it hadn't realized I'd turned yet. Like it was lagging behind me again. Or getting ahead. There's a hallway in the back of the store. You have to badge in twice to get there. Once through the stockroom, once past the chemical storage. It's not on the official blueprint. Most employees don't even know it exists. They call it the overflow. But no one's overflowed anything back there in years. I avoided it for as long as I could. But 2 nights ago, my scanner glitched. Said I had a card assigned to Zone 0BR Cold. No such zone exists. The handheld froze, then rebooted. When it came back, my name was replaced with 5 dashes, and the time read 7:13 a.m. Negative time. I tried to report it. Michelle was off. No one else knew what to do. So I followed it, past the pallets, past the freight cage, to the door marked receiving no entry after 12. I keyed in anyway. Inside was dark, darker than it should have been, even with the emergency lights. The air felt wrong, heavy, like it had weight to it. I moved slowly, flashlight pointed down. My beam passed over rusted dollies, old shelving, abandoned racks. Then, something breathed behind a plastic curtain. I paused. The curtain was barely hanging, torn at the edges. Behind it, shadows moved in circular patterns. Not shapes, just movements. Like dust spiraling in water. I pulled the curtain back and found a corridor that didn't belong to any Walmart. Gray walls, metal floor, no signage, just drawers. Drawer after drawer lining both sides. Morgue drawers. Each one had a tag, a number, a name. Some were blank, some scratched out. Some repeated the same word over and over. Remember. I backed away, heart pounding, but the drawer nearest me slid open. Inside, a copy of my Walmart vest, perfectly folded, fresh, not dusty, and underneath it, tucked into the lining, was a mirror. I picked it up without thinking, looked into it. The reflection was the cooler hallway. From the morgue, as it had been on my final night, empty, lit in sickly blue, and at the far end, drawer 7, hanging open, light flickering. Then, in the mirror, my reflection turned and walked into it, but I hadn't moved. When I looked back up from the mirror, the corridor was gone. I was standing alone in the back room, normal again, lights steady, no drawers. Except, the vest was still in my hand, and it was warm. It was my last night, no announcement, no notice. I didn't tell anyone. I just placed my badge on the break room table along with the vest, folded neatly. Taped to the locker was a copy of the drawer log from the morgue. Redacted. No names, no numbers, just one entry circled in black. Drawer 7. Status: unresolved. I left the keys on purpose. Not because I was done with the job, not because I was afraid, but because I understood now. It needed me to carry the routine, to go through the same steps. Open the doors, count the stock, walk past the cooler, clock in. Clock out, repeat. It had adapted to routine, and routine is permission. That's why I stopped. Why I refused to finish the checklist that night. I didn't scan the last barcode. I didn't log the restock on aisle 13. I didn't acknowledge the voice on the intercom, even when it whispered my mother's name in my own voice. I walked the floor once, without gloves, without a cart, empty-handed, and the store responded. The lights above me didn't flicker. They followed. One by one, row by row, each bulb lit only as I passed beneath it. The rest stayed dead, like the power grid had become conscious, watching, guiding. When I reached the dairy aisle, every cooler door stood open. Not wide, not swinging, just ajar. Perfect symmetry. And inside each one, folded neatly, were duplicates of my uniform, each slightly different. One had a name tag with my middle name. One had no tag at all. One had a different Walmart store number from a state I've never been to. I didn't touch any of them. Instead, I walked to the front, and there, behind register 7, was a chair. The same chair from the drawer room, facing the customer side. Waiting. I sat. The lights above the checkout line shut off. All of them. And in the silence I could hear it again. Not footsteps. Breath. Slow. Deep. Coming from the speaker above register 7. Then, through the intercom, a sentence. Clear and soft. Now you remember. That's when I stood, left the keys beneath the clock, and walked out the automatic doors as they opened for me before I could trigger the sensor, like it had known I was ready, like it had opened them for itself. I never went back, didn't return for my final paycheck, didn't answer the calls from HR, didn't even collect the shoes I left in my locker. It didn't matter. They weren't mine anymore. Some nights I still hear the buzz of those overhead lights when I close my eyes. The way they pulsed just before the intercom spoke, the rhythm of that breath behind the speaker, the sound of metal drawers opening in my dreams, even when I'm wide awake. You think you can leave places like that once you walk out the door, it ends. But the truth is simpler. Some doors don't open to let you out. They open to let something through. What followed me wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a hallucination or trauma or guilt. It was routine, a habit, a presence that survives by embedding itself into repetition. into corridors and checklists and drawer numbers and freezer aisles. It learned the morgue, then it learned me, then it moved on. I don't know where it is now. Maybe still in that Walmart, maybe not. But I do know this. Sometimes in public places, I'll feel a breeze that doesn't match the room. I'll see a convex mirror above a store aisle and catch a second shape moving beside mine. I don't acknowledge it. I just keep walking. The morgue didn't take my life. It didn't even take my sanity. What it took was the certainty that there's such a thing as silence. There isn't. There's only breath, waiting to be heard, and footsteps, waiting to be repeated.